Captain Park Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the UES Resilience, watching the stars through the massive viewing screen. His ship was the largest in humanity's third fleet, a giant metal beast that could survive almost anything space could throw at it. The bridge was quiet, except for the soft hum of machines and the occasional beep from the control panels. Park had been a ship captain for 15 years. He had seen many strange things in space, but he never got tired of looking at the stars. Earth was far behind them now, somewhere in the darkness. Most aliens in the galaxy called his home planet a death world because it was so dangerous. They said no normal life should be able to survive there. Park always found that funny. To him, Earth was just home. "Captain," called Kim Da-yoon from her position at the communications station. She was the best communications officer in the fleet, able to decode signals that other people could not understand. "I'm picking up something strange on the emergency channels." Park turned toward her. Kim looked worried, which was unusual. She had worked on ships for 10 years and rarely got upset about anything. "What kind of strange?" he asked. "It's a distress signal, but it's not from any human ship. The signal is weak and keeps breaking apart. I think it's coming from aliens, but they're using words I've never heard before." Kim's fingers moved quickly over her controls, trying to clean up the signal. Park walked over to her station. The communications equipment on human ships was built to be tough, just like everything else humans made. It could pick up signals from very far away and translate most alien languages. If Kim was having trouble with it, the signal must be in very bad shape. "Can you tell where it's coming from?" Park asked. "Yes, sir. About 6 hours away at full speed. The signal is getting weaker, so whatever is sending it might not last much longer." Kim looked up at him. "Captain, there's something else. The parts of the message I can understand, they keep talking about something called the Devourers and asking for help." Park felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He had never heard of anything called the Devourers, but the name sounded bad. "Keep working on it. I want to know everything they're saying." He walked back to his captain's chair and pressed a button. "This is Captain Park to all department heads. Report to the bridge immediately." Within minutes, his senior officers were standing around him. Lieutenant Commander Nam Ji-ho, the ship's engineer, was wiping grease from his hands. He had been working on the engines again. Dr. Choi Young-hee, the ship's medical officer, looked curious. She always got excited when they might meet new alien species. "We have a situation," Park said. "Kim, tell them what you told me." Kim explained about the distress signal. While she talked, more pieces of the message became clear. The aliens were asking for sanctuary. They said they were refugees running from something terrible. They mentioned the word survivors many times. "Why would aliens send a distress signal to us?" asked Nam. "Most species in the galaxy are afraid of humans. They think we're too dangerous because we come from a death world." Dr. Choi nodded. "It's true. When I went to medical school on the space station, the other alien students were scared of me. They couldn't believe humans could survive in the environments we live in." Park thought about this. Earth was classified as a Class II death world by the Galactic Council. It was the highest danger rating they had ever given to a planet. Earth had deadly weather, dangerous animals, poisonous plants, and radiation from space. Most aliens thought humans were crazy for living there, but these aliens were asking humans for help. That meant they were running from something even more dangerous than humans. "Kim, have you found out anything else?" Park asked. "Yes, sir. I've got coordinates now. And Captain, they're not just asking for help. They're specifically asking for help from humans. The message says they heard stories about the people who dance with death and call it home." The bridge went quiet. Everyone looked at each other. That was definitely talking about humans. "There's more," Kim continued. "The signal is coming from a ship called the Whispered Hope. They say they have survivors from 3 different alien species on board. And Captain, they say the thing chasing them destroys entire worlds." Park made his decision quickly. It was the kind of fast thinking that humans were known for. Most alien species spent long time discussing and planning before doing anything. Humans acted fast when people needed help. Set course for those coordinates. Maximum speed. He pressed another button. All hands, this is the captain. We're responding to a distress call from an alien ship. Prepare for possible rescue operations. The Resilience turned toward the coordinates and began to speed up. Human ships were built for this kind of thing. They could move fast and handle rough conditions. Most alien ships were more comfortable, but much more fragile. As they traveled, Kim kept working on the signal. She was able to understand more of the message. The aliens said they had been running for weeks. They were low on food and power. Their ship was damaged. Some of their people were hurt. Captain, Kim said, I'm getting a clearer picture now. They're refugees from something called the Andromeda Spiral. They say machines are destroying everything there. These devourers eat entire planets and then make more of themselves. Dr. Choi looked scared. Machines that eat planets? How is that possible? I don't know, Park said. But if these aliens are so scared that they're asking humans for help, it must be really bad. Nam was looking at his engineering displays. Captain, we'll reach the coordinates in 5 hours and 37 minutes. But, sir, I'm thinking about what happens after we pick them up. If something that dangerous is chasing them, it might follow them here. Park had thought about that too. But he knew what humans did when people needed help. They helped, even if it was dangerous. It was one of the things that made other aliens think humans were crazy. We'll deal with that when it happens, Park said. Right now there are people who need our help. The next few hours passed slowly. Kim kept listening to the signal, which was getting weaker. The aliens were still alive, but their ship was in bad shape. She could hear the fear in their voices, even though she didn't understand all their words. Finally, they reached the coordinates. On the viewing screen, they could see a strange ship floating in space. It looked like it was made of crystal and metal mixed together. Parts of it were dark, and there were holes in the hull. That ship is barely holding together, Nam said, looking at his scanner readings. Their life support is failing, and they've got no weapons or shields left. How many life forms? Asked Dr. Choi. 847, Nam replied. All alive, but many showing signs of stress and injury. Park looked at the damaged ship on the screen. Inside were hundreds of aliens who had traveled across the galaxy asking humans for help. They were scared and hurt and far from home, and somewhere behind them was something so terrible that entire worlds ran away from it. Send them a message, Park said to Kim. Tell them this is Captain Park Hyun-woo of the United Earth Ship Resilience. Tell them they're safe now. We're humans, and we're here to help. The alien ship looked even worse up close. Captain Park watched through the viewing screen as his crew prepared to bring the refugees aboard the Resilience. The crystal and metal ship had many holes, and some parts were completely missing. It was amazing that anyone inside was still alive. Captain, said Kim Da-eun from her communications station, the aliens are responding to our message. They sound very happy, but also very scared. Scared of what? Park asked. The things chasing them? No, sir. They're scared of us. Park looked confused. But they asked for our help. Kim nodded. Yes, but now that we're here, they're afraid. The alien speaking to me keeps apologizing and asking if we're going to hurt them. She says they know humans are from the most dangerous world in the galaxy. Dr. Choi stepped forward. Captain, maybe I should talk to them first. Medical personnel are usually less frightening to other species. Park agreed. Dr. Choi was small and had a gentle voice. If anyone could make the aliens feel safe, it would be her. Soon, Dr. Choi was speaking with the aliens over the communication system. She spoke slowly and used simple words. The lead alien told her that her name was Kethamira, and that she was from a species called the Velthari. She said there were also Mordun and Luxara people on their ship. Doctor, Kethamira said through the translator, we are very grateful that you came to help us. but we have heard many stories about humans. They say you eat poison for breakfast and swim in acid for fun. They say human children play games that would kill adult warriors from other species. Dr. Choi laughed softly. We don't eat poison or swim in acid. We just come from a world that's a little more dangerous than most. But we won't hurt you. We want to help. A little more dangerous? Kethmira sounded confused. Your world is rated Class 13. That's the highest danger rating possible. The Galactic Council says nothing should be able to live there. Well, Dr. Choi said, we manage just fine. Now let me ask about your injured people. How can we help them? As Dr. Choi talked with the aliens, Park received a message that made him worried. Admiral Lee Sang-min was coming to their location. Lee was Park's boss and the commander of the entire Third Fleet. If he was coming personally, it meant this situation was very important. 2 hours later, Admiral Lee's ship arrived. Lee was a tall man with gray hair who had been in the space Navy for 30 years. He came aboard the Resilience and went straight to the bridge. Captain Park, Lee said, what exactly is our situation here? Park explained everything they knew about the refugee ship and the aliens' story about the Devourers. Admiral Lee listened carefully and asked many questions. Have you brought any of the aliens aboard yet? Lee asked. Not yet, sir. Dr. Choi is still talking with them about their medical needs. They seem very afraid of us. Lee nodded. I'm not surprised. Most aliens think we're monsters because we survive on Earth. But if they came to us for help, their situation must be very bad. Just then, Kim called out from her station. Admiral, Captain, I'm receiving a transmission from the Galactic Council. They want to speak with you immediately. The main viewing screen changed to show a large alien with blue skin and 4 arms. Park recognized him as Zurvek, one of the council representatives who often spoke for the government that ruled most of the galaxy. Admiral Lee, Zurvek said in his deep voice, we understand you have encountered a refugee vessel in your territory. That's correct, Lee replied. We responded to their distress call. These refugees must be turned over to proper council authorities immediately. Humans are not qualified to handle delicate alien populations. Your species is far too dangerous and unpredictable. Admiral, Lee's face got hard. Park knew that look. The Admiral didn't like being told what to do, especially when people needed help. These aliens specifically asked for human assistance, Lee said. They're in our territory, and we're perfectly capable of providing aid. Zurvek's 4 arms moved, in a way that showed he was upset. Admiral, you must understand. These refugees come from worlds destroyed by an ancient threat. They need to be relocated to safe council worlds where they can be properly protected. And where would these safe worlds be? Lee asked. We have several options prepared. Peaceful worlds with minimal dangers and proper facilities for refugee populations. On a side screen, Park could see Kethmira listening to the conversation. Her crystal-like face showed pure terror when Zurvek mentioned the council worlds. Admiral, Kethmira suddenly spoke up, please don't send us to the council worlds. The Devourers will find us there easily. Those worlds have no defenses. Everyone there lives in peace and safety. They don't know how to fight or hide. The Devourers will consume them in days. Zurvek looked angry. The refugee will not speak during official council business. But Kethmira continued talking. Admiral Lee, we came to human space because we heard stories. We heard that humans are the only species that fights when everything seems hopeless. We heard that you never give up even when death is certain. We heard that you've turned the most dangerous world in the galaxy into your home. Those stories make humans sound like monsters, Zurvek said. No, Kethmira replied. Those stories make humans sound like survivors, and that's what we need to be right now. Admiral Lee looked at Zurvek on the screen. The refugees will stay under human protection. This is our final decision. Zurvek's skin turned a darker blue. which Park knew meant the alien was very angry. This is highly irregular. The Council has never allowed a Deathworld species to handle refugee populations. You have no experience with other species' needs. Then, we'll learn, Lee said simply. After Zorvek ended the communication, Park felt nervous. Defying the Galactic Council was a big deal. Humans had always followed Council rules because they wanted to be part of the galactic community. Sir, Park said, are you sure about this? The Council won't be happy. Lee looked out at the damaged, refugee ship. Captain, do you know what the difference is between humans and most other species? No, sir. Most species in the galaxy evolved on safe worlds. They never had to deal with big predators, dangerous weather, or environments that could kill them in seconds. So, when real danger comes, they don't know what to do. They try to find safe places to hide. Lee walked to the viewing screen. But humans, we evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned to fight back. We learned to protect each other. And most importantly, we learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is run away. Dr. Choi's voice came over the communication system. Admiral, Captain, I've finished my medical examination of the refugees. They're in worse shape than I thought. How bad? Lee asked. What they consider serious injuries, we would call minor cuts and bruises. What they consider extreme stress, we would call a normal Tuesday. Admiral, these people are hurt and scared, but they're not fragile. They've been through something terrible, and they survived. Park began to understand. The aliens weren't asking humans for help because they thought humans were nice. They were asking for help because they thought humans were strong enough to protect them from something that destroyed entire worlds. Doctor, Lee said, begin bringing the refugees aboard. Give them whatever medical care they need. Yes, sir. Admiral, there's one more thing. Kethamira asked me to tell you something. She said that in her language, the word they use for humans translates to death dancers. She said it's meant as a compliment. Admiral Lee smiled for the first time since he arrived. Tell her we're honored by the name. 3 days had passed since the refugees came aboard the Resilience. Engineer Namji Ho was working harder than ever before in his life. He had to change parts of the ship to make it safe for aliens who needed completely different things to survive. Velthari needed special minerals in their air or they would get sick and die. The Mordun needed water tanks to live in because they came from ocean worlds. The Luxara were the strangest of all. They were made of energy and needed to be kept away from the ship's electrical systems or they would accidentally break everything. Nam stood in what used to be Cargo Bay 7, watching his workers install a huge water tank. Inside, 3 Mordun refugees floated peacefully. They looked like giant jellyfish with arms and big black eyes. One of them, whose name was something Nam couldn't pronounce, waved at him through the clear wall of the tank. How are we doing, Chief? Asked Petty Officer Yun Hanul. She was one of Nam's best workers and had been helping with the alien modifications for 3 days without sleep. We're getting there, Nam said, wiping sweat from his face. But I've never had to turn a warship into a home for 3 different species before. The Luxara are the biggest problem. Every time one of them gets excited or scared, they send out energy that makes our computers crash. Yoon laughed. Yesterday, one of them was happy about the food we gave them, and they accidentally turned off the lights on the entire deck. Nam nodded. It was true. The Luxara looked like living lightning trapped in human-shaped force fields. They were very polite and tried hard not to cause problems, but they couldn't help what they were. The good news, Nam continued, is that we're learning a lot. Did you know the Velthari can see types of light that we can't? And the Mordun can sense electrical fields from across the ship. If we ever have to fight alongside them, these abilities could be very useful. In another part of the ship, Colonel Bei Minjung was having her own challenges. She was the leader of the Marines on the Resilience, and Admiral Lee had asked her to start training the refugees who wanted to fight. The problem was that what humans considered basic training was apparently impossible for most other species. "Okay, everyone," Colonel Bay said to a group of 20 refugees standing in the ship's gymnasium, "today we're going to do some simple exercises to build up your strength and endurance." Kethamira, the Velthari leader, raised one of her crystal arms. "Colonel Bay, when you say simple exercises, what exactly do you mean?" "Just basic stuff. Some running, some lifting weights, maybe some combat training. Nothing too hard." The aliens looked at each other nervously. They had been aboard the human ship for 3 days, and they were still amazed by what they saw humans do every day. That morning, they had watched human crew members do their normal exercise routine. The humans ran on machines while breathing, heavily, lifted metal objects that weighed more than most aliens, and practiced fighting moves that looked deadly. The aliens were shocked to learn that this was just how humans stayed healthy. "Colonel," said a Mordun, whose name sounded like Glub Click Whistle, "yesterday I saw a human child playing a game where she tried to catch a ball while other humans threw things at her. In my species, that would be considered combat training. For warriors." Colonel Bay looked confused. "You mean dodgeball? That's just a fun game for kids." The aliens stared at her. On their worlds, anything that involved moving quickly to avoid flying objects was serious military training. "Let's start with something easy," Colonel Bay said. She led them to a running track that went around the inside of the gymnasium. "We'll just jog slowly for 10 minutes. 20 minutes later, half the aliens were lying on the floor trying to catch their breath. The other half were still jogging, but they looked like they were about to die. "This is impossible," gasped a Luxara, whose energy field was flickering weakly. "How do humans do this every day?" "We don't consider this exercise," said Petty Officer Kim Tae-young, who was helping with the training. "This is just a warm-up. Real exercise comes after this." The aliens looked terrified. Meanwhile, in the intelligence section of the ship, Lieutenant Shin Woo-jin was studying everything the refugees could tell him about the Devourers. What he learned made him very worried. Shin had been analyzing alien threats for 8 years, but he had never seen anything like this. The Devourers were not just dangerous. They were smart, adaptable, and completely focused on destroying all organic life. "Tell me again about their ships," Shin said to Kethmira during one of their daily meetings. Kethmira's crystal body dimmed, which happened when she was sad or scared. "They don't really have ships like we do. They have these huge machines that can change shape. When they attack a planet, the machines land and start eating everything. Rocks, plants, animals, even the air. Then they use what they ate to build more machines. How long does it take them to consume a world? The first world they attack took them 6 days, but each time they attack somewhere new, they get faster. The last world we saw them destroy, they finished it in 18 hours, Shin wrote notes on his computer. "And you said they learn from each fight?" "Yes. When my people first fought them, we used energy weapons. The second time we fought, their machines were protected against energy. Weapons! When the Mordun tried to fight them underwater, the machines learned how to work underwater too." This was the worst news Shin had heard. Most enemies stayed the same during a war. You could learn their weaknesses and use them. But the Devourers changed and improved after every battle. "How many worlds have they destroyed?" Shin asked. 17, that we know of. But there might be more. The machines move very fast, and they don't leave any survivors to tell others what happened. Shin looked at his notes. 17 worlds meant billions of dead aliens, and the Devourers were heading toward human space. "Kethmira, why did you come to us? Really? There are other species that are closer to where you were running from." Kethmira was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Because those other species would try to negotiate with the Devourers. They would try to find a peaceful solution. They would offer to give the machines some worlds in exchange for leaving others alone." "And you don't think that would work?" "The Devourers don't want some worlds. They want all worlds. They want to turn the entire galaxy into machines." "Kethmira," looked directly at Shin. "We came to humans because we heard that when humans are threatened, they don't try to make deals with their enemies. They fight." That evening, Admiral Lee called a meeting of all senior officers. The briefing room was crowded with humans and several refugee leaders. "I've received new intelligence about our situation," Admiral Lee said. "The Galactic Council has voted to relocate all refugees to their designated safe worlds. They're sending a fleet to take them away from us." The refugee leaders looked panicked. Kathamira stood up quickly. "Admiral, please don't let them take us. Those worlds can't protect themselves. The Devourers will find us easily." "I have no intention of turning you over to the Council," Lee said firmly, "but this means we're now in direct opposition to the galactic government. They consider us to be in violation of interstellar law." Captain Park spoke up. "Sir, what about the Devourers? Are they still coming?" Shin answered that question. "According to our refugee friends, the Devourers should reach the edge of human space in about 2 weeks. They're moving faster than expected." The room went quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. In 2 weeks, they would face an enemy that had destroyed 17 worlds and was getting stronger with each victory. "So," Admiral Lee said, "we have 2 weeks to prepare for a war against an enemy that adapts to everything we do, while also dealing with a galactic council that wants to arrest us for helping refugees." Engineer Nam raised his hand. "Admiral, I have an idea about that. What if being from a death world is actually an advantage against these machines?" "What do you mean?" "Well, the machines learn from their enemies, right? But all their enemies so far have been from safe, peaceful worlds. They've never fought against people who grew up dealing with constant danger. Maybe we can do things they've never seen before." Dr. Choi nodded. "Nam is right. These refugees keep being amazed by normal human activities. If things that are normal for us are impossible for other species, maybe they'll be impossible for the machines to predict too." Admiral Lee smiled slowly. "So you're saying that coming from the most dangerous world in the galaxy might actually be useful for once?" "Yes, sir," Nam said. "The Devourers have learned how to fight civilized species, but they've never tried to fight barbarians. The warning came in the middle of the night. Captain Park was sleeping when the emergency alarm woke him up. Red lights flashed in his quarters as he quickly put on his uniform and ran to the bridge. "Report," Park said as he reached his captain's chair. "Sir," said Lieutenant Kim Da-yoon, who was working the night shift. "We just received a distress call from the New Jeju mining colony. They're under attack." Park felt his stomach drop. New Jeju was a human colony with 50,000 people living. On it, they mined special metals that were used to build ships and space stations. "What kind of attack?" Park asked, though he was afraid he already knew the answer. "Unknown ships, sir. But the colony commander says they look like machines and they're eating the planet." The Devourers had arrived. Admiral Lee's voice came over the communication system from his flagship. "All ships, this is Admiral Lee. Set course for New Jeju. Immediately. Maximum speed." The human fleet began moving toward the colony. Park looked at the navigation display. Even at their fastest speed, it would take them 6 hours to get there. "Sir," said Engineer Nam Ji-ho, who had just arrived on the bridge. "Should I wake up the refugees? They might want to help." Park thought about this. The aliens had asked to fight alongside the humans, but Park wasn't sure they were ready. Human training was hard for them, and this would be a real battle. "Wake up their leaders," Park decided. "Tell them what's happening and let them choose." 30 minutes later, Kathamira and several other refugee leaders were on the bridge. They looked scared but determined. "We want to help," Kathamira said immediately. "These machines destroyed our worlds. We won't let them destroy yours." "This will be dangerous," Park warned. "Real combat is much worse than training." A Mordun, leader whose name sounded like deep current flows, spoke up. "Captain Park, we have been running from these machines for months. We are tired of running. It's time to fight back." Park nodded. "Then you fight with us." The trip to New Jeju took 6 hours, but it felt like forever. During the journey, the communications from the colony got worse and worse. The Devourers had landed on the planet and were consuming everything they touched. Commander. Oh Sung-ho was in charge of defending the colony. His messages painted a terrible picture. The Devourer machines were huge, shaped like metal spiders with weapons that could melt through anything. They ate the ground, the buildings, even the air itself. Admiral, Commander O's voice crackled over the radio. These things are unlike anything we've ever seen. Our weapons barely slow them down, and every time we destroy one, 2 more appear. How long can you hold out? Admiral Lee asked. Maybe 2 hours, sir. We're evacuating as many people as we can, but these machines are everywhere. When the human fleet finally reached New Jeju, Park could see the destruction from space. Large parts of the planet looked different. Where there used to be green forests and blue lakes, now there were gray metal structures. The Devourers were turning the planet into a giant machine. All ships, Admiral Lee ordered, attack formation. Target the largest enemy structures first. The battle began immediately. Human ships flew down toward the planet, shooting at the Devourer machines with every weapon they had. The machines shot back with beams of energy that could cut through ship armor like paper. Park watched on his viewing screen as the battle unfolded. The Devourers were exactly as the refugees had described. They learned and adapted quickly. When human ships attacked from one direction, the machines moved to protect themselves. When humans used one type of weapon, the machines developed defenses against it. But the humans did something the machines weren't expecting. Sergeant Yoon Ha-Nyul led a group of Marines in a direct attack on one of the largest Devourer machines. Instead of fighting from a safe distance like most species would do, the humans flew their small attack ships directly into the machine and began fighting inside it. "This is insane," said a Velthari refugee who was watching from the bridge. "They're fighting inside the enemy machine. If it explodes, they'll die." "That's the point," said Nam Ji-ho, who was monitoring the battle. "The machines are designed to fight enemies that try to stay safe. They don't know how to handle enemies that don't care about safety." Sergeant Yoon and her Marines moved through the inside of the Devourer machine, setting explosive charges. The machine tried to stop them, but its defenses were designed to fight other machines or aliens who fought carefully. The Marines moved too fast and took too many risks for the machine to predict what they would do next. "Charges set," Yoon reported over the radio. "Getting out now." But the Devourer machine had learned something new. It sealed all the exits, trapping the Marines inside. "I can't get out," Yoon said. Her voice was calm, which surprised the refugees, listening. "The machine has blocked all the exits. I'm going to detonate the charges manually." This meant Sergeant Yoon would die in the explosion, but she would also destroy the machine. "Negative," Commander O said over the radio. "We'll find another way. Sir, there's no time. This machine is building 2 more copies of itself. If I don't stop it now, we'll have 3 of these things to fight instead of 1. The refugees watched in shock as Sergeant Yoon set off the explosives. The huge Devourer machine exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Yoon and her Marines died, but they had destroyed something that could have killed thousands of people. "I don't understand," whispered Kethmira. "Why did she do that? Why did she choose to die?" Captain Park answered quietly. "Because that's what humans do. We protect others, even if it costs us everything." The battle continued for 3 more hours. The humans lost 5 ships and 200 Marines, but they destroyed 7 of the largest Devourer machines. More importantly, they learned how to fight the enemy. Pilot Jang Tae-young discovered that the machines had trouble tracking ships that moved in completely random patterns. While other species flew in careful formations, Jang flew his fighter like he was dodging meteors in an asteroid field. He spun, rolled, and changed direction so quickly that the machine weapons couldn't hit him. The machines predict where we're Going to be, Jang reported. But if we don't know where we're going to be, they can't predict it either. This information spread quickly to all human pilots. Soon, the entire human fleet was flying in ways that looked completely crazy to the refugees but worked perfectly against the devourers. The aliens had never seen anything like it. Human ships flew through explosions, dove toward the planet at dangerous speeds, and fought at ranges where one mistake would mean death. The pilots acted like they were playing a dangerous game instead of fighting for their lives. But the most shocking thing happened when one of the refugee ships joined the battle. A group of Velthari, Mordun, and Luxara had volunteered to fly alongside the humans. Their ship was damaged by a devourer weapon and began falling toward the planet. Any normal species would have evacuated the ship and let it crash. But the human marines on board did something different. "We're not abandoning ship," reported Marine Lieutenant Huang Min-seok. "We're turning this ship into a missile." The refugees watched as the humans used their falling ship to destroy 3 devourer machines on the ground. Instead of trying to save themselves, they used their situation as a weapon. "They're all insane," said Deep Current Flows, the Mordun leader. But he didn't sound critical. He sounded amazed. "No," Kethmira said, watching the battle. "They're not insane. They're just human." By the end of the battle, the humans had saved most of the colony. The devourers retreated back into space, but everyone knew they would return with more machines and new adaptations. Commander O's final report was both good and bad news. "We've evacuated 47,000 people from New Jeju. The planet is lost, but we've learned how to fight these things. They can adapt to logical tactics, but they can't adapt to controlled chaos." Admiral Lee's voice came over the ship's speakers. "All ships, this is Admiral Lee. We've won our first battle against the Devourers, but this is just the beginning. They'll be back, and they'll be ready for what we did today. We need to be ready too." Park looked at the refugee leaders on his bridge. They were staring at the battle damage reports with expressions of awe and confusion. "Captain Park," Kethmira said slowly, "we came to you asking for protection. But I think we were wrong about something." "What's that?" "We thought humans were dangerous because you survived on a death world. But that's not why you're dangerous. You're dangerous because when death comes for you, you dance with it instead of running away." News of the battle at New Jeju spread across the galaxy faster than anyone expected. For the first time in the history of the Devourer attacks, someone had not only survived but actually won a fight against the machines. Ambassador Hong Yun-ji stood in her office aboard the diplomatic ship Harmony, reading message after message from alien governments. Before the battle, most species in the galaxy avoided talking to humans. Now everyone wanted to be their friend. Ambassador said. Her assistant, Lieutenant Park Do-hyun, "We have 17 more requests for meetings today. The Zephyrian Council wants to discuss a defense treaty. The Crystalline Federation is offering to share their technology. Even the Peaceful Collective is asking for military advice." Hong looked out the window of her ship at the growing fleet around them. When they first came to this meeting point near the edge of human space, only Admiral Lee's ships were here. Now there were over 200 ships from 40 different species. "This is unprecedented," Hong said. "I've been a diplomat for 20 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Usually it takes months of negotiation just to get 2 species to agree on simple trade deals." "Well," Park said, "most species have never faced complete extinction before. Fear makes diplomacy much faster." Hong walked to her desk, where reports from the battle were displayed on her computer screen. The more she read, the more she understood why the aliens were so eager to work with humans. Every species that had fought the Devourers before had tried the same basic strategy: stay far away and shoot at the machines with their strongest weapons. When that didn't work, they tried to negotiate or surrender. None of these approaches had ever succeeded, but humans had done something completely different. They had flown directly into danger, fought inside enemy machines, and used their own damaged ships as weapons. Most importantly, they had been willing to die to save others. Ambassador, Park said. The first delegation is here for their meeting. The delegation was from the Healer Coalition, a group of species that specialized in medicine and peacekeeping. Their leader was a tall, thin alien, named Velthara, who had pale green skin and large, gentle eyes. Ambassador Hong, Velthara said as she entered the meeting room. My people have watched the recordings from your battle at New Jeju. We are disturbed by what we saw. Hong wasn't surprised. The Healer Coalition believed that violence was never the answer to any problem. They probably thought the human tactics were barbaric. We understand that our methods may seem extreme, Hong began. Extreme? Velthara interrupted. Ambassador, we watched your Marines voluntarily enter a machine that was designed to kill them. We watched your pilots fly in patterns that should have resulted in their own destruction. We watched an entire ship's crew choose to die rather than abandon their mission, Hong nodded. Yes, our people made difficult choices. No, you misunderstand me, Velthara said, and her voice was full of emotion. What we saw was not barbaric. What we saw was beautiful. For centuries, my people have taught that all life is precious and must be preserved. But we never understood what that truly meant until we watched humans die to save strangers. Hong was surprised. This was not the reaction she had expected. Ambassador Hong, Velthara continued, the Healer Coalition wants to join your fight against the Devourers. We have medical technology that could help heal your wounded faster. We have hospital ships that could save lives during battles. We want to help humans save the galaxy. After Velthara left, Hong had similar meetings with delegation after delegation. The results were always the same. The aliens were amazed by what humans had done, and they wanted to help. But not everyone was happy about this new alliance. This is completely unacceptable, said Zurvek, the Galactic Council representative, during a video call later that day. Humans are a Deathworld species. They cannot be allowed to lead a galactic military coalition. Why not? Hong asked. They've proven they can fight the Devourers effectively. Their methods are too dangerous. They take risks that no civilized species would consider. If other species start copying human tactics, it will lead to chaos and destruction. Hong looked at the reports on her desk. Zurvek, in the past 6 months, the Devourers have destroyed 17 worlds and killed billions of people. The civilized methods haven't worked. Maybe it's time to try something different. The Council has other plans. We are developing new defensive technologies. We are negotiating with the Devourers to find a peaceful solution. You're negotiating with machines that eat planets? We believe that any intelligent species can be reasoned with, even artificial ones. Violence should always be the last option. Hong ended the communication feeling frustrated. The Galactic Council still didn't understand what they were dealing with. The Devourers weren't interested in negotiations or treaties. They wanted to turn every living thing in the galaxy into machines. Meanwhile, on the other side of the ship, Dr. Kim Jae-hyun was working with a team of alien scientists to develop what they were calling the Deathworld Doctrine. Dr. Kim was a human anthropologist who studied how different species evolved and developed. He had spent years trying to understand why humans were so different from other intelligent life in the galaxy. The key, Dr. Kim explained to a group of alien researchers, is understanding how Deathworld evolution works. Most species evolved on planets where the biggest challenges were finding food, avoiding disease, or competing with other intelligent species for resources. A scientist from the Thinking Machines Collective, whose name was translated as Logic Pattern 7, raised a mechanical arm. And humans evolved differently? Earth was different, Dr. Kim said. Our planet tried to kill us in new and creative ways every single day. We had to survive poisonous animals, deadly weather, predators that could hunt us from land, sea, or air, radiation from space, earthquakes, volcanoes, and diseases that could wipe out entire populations. That sounds horrible, said a Velthari researcher whose crystal body was flickering with what Dr. Kim recognized as distress. It was horrible, Dr. Kim agreed, but it made us very good at dealing with horrible situations. When most species encounter something that could kill them, their first instinct is to run away or hide. When humans encounter something that could kill us, our first instinct is to figure out how to kill it first. Logic Pattern 7 processed this information. So you are suggesting that other species could learn to think like humans? Not exactly. Each species has its own evolutionary advantages, but we can teach them to think more like Deathworld survivors. The Devourers have learned how to fight civilized species, but they've never encountered organized chaos. Dr. Kim pulled up a holographic display showing battle tactics. Look at how most species fight. They use formations, follow rules, and try to minimize casualties. It's logical and predictable. The Devourers can adapt to it easily. The display changed to show recordings from the new Jeju battle. Now look at how humans fight. We break our own rules when necessary. We use unpredictable tactics. We're willing to sacrifice some to save many. The machines can't adapt to this because there's no logical pattern to follow. A researcher from the Peaceful Collective asked, "But how do you teach someone to be unpredictable? Doesn't that defeat the purpose?" Dr. Kim smiled. You don't teach them to be unpredictable. You teach them to be comfortable with chaos. You teach them that sometimes the only way to survive is to do something that seems impossible. Fleet Admiral Song Mi-young arrived at the meeting point 3 days later. She was one of the most experienced military commanders in human space, and Admiral Lee had asked her to take command of the new alliance. Song was a small woman with short gray hair, but everyone who met her quickly learned that she was incredibly tough. She had fought in the border wars, survived 3 ship crashes, and once spent 2 weeks alone on a planet where the air was poisonous to humans. "I've reviewed all the applications," Song announced during her first meeting with the Alliance. Leadership. "We now have 47 species that want to join our coalition against the Devourers." "That's more than I expected," said Admiral Lee. "It's also more than I'm comfortable with," Song replied. "Most of these species have never been in a real war. Their idea of military conflict is sending strongly worded diplomatic messages to their enemies." Kethmira, who had become the official representative for all the refugees, spoke up. "Admiral Song, my people and the other refugees want to help train the new alliance members. We've seen how humans fight, and we've been practicing your methods." Song looked at the crystal alien with interest. "And how has that training gone?" "It's been educational. Yesterday, one of our Luxara volunteers managed to stay conscious during a human emergency drill. We consider this a major victory." Admiral Lee laughed. "The emergency drill where we simulate hull breaches and toxic gas leaks?" "The same one. For most aliens, just watching that drill causes panic attacks, but our volunteers are getting stronger." Song nodded approvingly. "Good. We're going to need every advantage we can get. The Devourers won't give us long to organize. This alliance, they're probably already adapting to what we did at New Jeju." Ambassador Hong looked at the growing fleet outside the window. "Admiral, do you really think we can teach the galaxy to fight like humans?" Drill instructor Park Dong-hyun stood in front of 200 alien volunteers on the training planet Sparta 7. This was a human training world where the air was thin, the gravity was twice Earth normal, and acid rain fell every 3 hours. For humans, it was considered a good place to build character. For aliens, it was barely survivable. "Listen up," Park shouted at the group of recruits. "You came here because you want to learn how to fight the Devourers. That means you need to learn how to think like humans. And thinking like humans means getting comfortable with being uncomfortable." A Crystalline Federation volunteer raised one of her many arms. "Instructor Park, when you say uncomfortable, exactly how uncomfortable do you mean?" Park looked at the alien, whose name was something that sounded like chiming bells in wind. She was from a species that lived on a planet where the weather was always perfect, where there were no predators, and where the biggest danger was occasionally stubbing a toe on a smooth rock. "Well," Park said, "today we're going to practice, fighting in a toxic atmosphere while someone shoots at you. Tomorrow we'll do underwater combat training in water that's hot enough to cook most food. Next week we'll practice zero-gravity warfare in a radiation field." Half the aliens immediately started talking to each other in their various languages. Park could tell they were discussing whether this was a joke. "Instructor," said a peaceful collective representative whose translator called him Harmony Seeker, "on my world, we consider it extreme training if someone raises their voice during a disagreement." "Are you saying we need to learn to fight while being poisoned?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Park replied. "The Devourers don't care if you're comfortable. They don't care if you're scared. They don't care if the environment is perfect for your species. They attack anyway, so you need to learn to fight anyway." 3 aliens immediately quit and went home, but the ones who stayed surprised Park. Over the next few weeks, he watched alien species do things that should have been impossible for them. A group of Healer Coalition volunteers learned to provide medical treatment while wearing full combat armor in a sandstorm. They complained constantly about how heavy the armor was and how they couldn't see through the sand, but they kept working. A team of thinking machine collective units learned to make tactical decisions when their sensors were being jammed by electromagnetic interference. For artificial intelligences that relied on perfect information, this was like asking them to think while blind and deaf. But they adapted. Most impressive were the refugees. Kethmira and her fellow survivors had been studying human methods for weeks now. They were becoming the bridge between human trainers and alien recruits. "Remember," Kethmira told a group of new volunteers, "humans don't do these things because they enjoy suffering. They do them because they know that preparing for the worst makes everything else seem easy." On another training world called Endurance 3, engineer Lee So-young was working with alien shipbuilders to create new kinds of spacecraft. The challenge was combining human durability with alien technology. "The problem," Lee explained to her, mixed species engineering team, "is that human ships and alien ships are designed for completely different philosophies." She pulled up holographic displays showing different ship designs. "Human ships are built like tanks. They can take a lot of damage and keep fighting. We expect our ships to get hurt in battle, so we design them to work even when half the systems are destroyed." A Velthari engineer whose name translated to precise crystal patterns studied the human ship designs. "These ships seem very crude. Our ships have much more elegant systems and better efficiency." "Your ships are beautiful," Lee agreed. "But what happens when something damages your elegant systems?" "Well, usually the ship stops working and we call for repair crews." Lee nodded. "And that's exactly the problem. In a fight with the Devourers, there are no repair crews. There's just you, your ship, and machines that want to eat both of you." She showed them recordings from the new Jeju battle. "Look at this human destroyer. It took 17 direct hits, lost main power, had its hull cracked in 4 places, and was leaking atmosphere. But it kept fighting for another 2 hours because we built backup systems for our backup systems." The alien engineers watched in amazement as the damaged human ship continued to fire its weapons even while parts of it were exploding. "How is that possible?" asked a Mordun engineer whose name sounded like deep current flows. "Because we designed it to fail safely," Lee said. "When one system breaks, another system takes over. When that breaks, a third system starts working. When all the main systems are dead, the crew can still fight using manual controls and backup power." "Precise crystal pattern," looked confused. "But that means your ships are much heavier and less efficient than they could be." "Exactly," Lee said with a smile. "Human ships are inefficient, ugly, and overbuilt, but they're also very hard to kill." Over the next month, Lee's team designed new ships that combined the best of both approaches. They had the elegant technology of alien civilizations, but also the stubborn durability of human engineering. The first test ship was called the Unity. It looked strange, part crystal, part metal, part energy field. When they tested it in combat simulations, it performed better than anyone expected. "It's not as pretty as a pure alien design," Lee admitted to Admiral Song during a video call. "And it's not as tough as a pure human design, but it's tougher than alien ships and prettier than human ships." Meanwhile, on the diplomatic front, things were getting complicated. The Galactic Council was becoming more and more angry about the Deathworld Defense Alliance. Zurvek sent message after message demanding that the alliance be dissolved. He claimed that humans were corrupting peaceful species and turning them into warriors. "The humans are teaching other species to be violent," Zurvek said during a public broadcast. "They are spreading their Deathworld madness throughout the galaxy. This alliance is more dangerous than the Devourers themselves." But the aliens who were actually training with humans had a different opinion. Chiming Bells in Wind, who had been training on Sparta 7 for 6 weeks, gave her own broadcast response. "Before I came here, I thought humans were monsters. I thought they were cruel and savage. But now I understand the truth." She paused, and her crystal body glowed with determination. "Humans aren't monsters. They're teachers. They're teaching us how to be strong when we never thought we could be strong. They're teaching us how to protect the things we love." More and more aliens began speaking out in support of the alliance. The Healer Coalition announced that they were sending their entire medical fleet to work with human forces. The Thinking Machine Collective offered to share their most advanced computer systems with human engineers. Even some members of the Galactic Council began to question Zurvek's position. "Perhaps," said Council member Yithara during a private meeting, "we should consider that the humans might be right about this threat." But Zurvek refused to listen. "The Council has voted. The Deathworld Defense Alliance is illegal. If they continue to operate, we will be forced to take action against them." Back on Sparta 7, Park was finishing up another day of training when he received a message that made him smile. The first group of alien graduates was ready for their final test. "Congratulations," he told the 200 aliens who had survived. 6 weeks of human training. "You've learned how to fight in impossible conditions, how to make decisions when you don't have enough information, and how to keep going when everything seems hopeless." Kethmira stepped forward to speak for the group. "Instructor Park, we want to thank you. When we came here, we were refugees running from an enemy we couldn't fight. Now we feel like we might actually have a chance." "You more than have a chance," Park said. "You've become something the Devourers have never faced before. You're not just aliens anymore, and you're not trying to be humans. You're something new. Survivors who chose to learn how to fight back." As the graduates prepared to return to their ships and share their training with others, Park received another message. This one was from Admiral Song. "Park," the message said, "we've got good news and bad news. The good news is that we now have over 300 ships in the Alliance with crews trained in Deathworld tactics. The bad news is that long-range sensors have detected a massive Devourer fleet heading our way. They'll be here in 2 weeks." Park looked at his alien graduates, who were laughing and celebrating their accomplishment. They had no idea that their training was about to be tested in the biggest battle the galaxy had ever seen. 2 weeks, Park muttered to himself. "I hope it's enough time." Dr. Kim Jae-hyun was on the research station think tank when he made a discovery that changed everything. He had been studying recordings of Devourer attacks, trying to understand how the machines learned and adapted. "I think I know why the Devourers are having trouble adapting to human tactics," he told Admiral Song during their daily briefing. "Explain," Song said. "The Devourers are incredibly intelligent, but they think like machines. They analyze patterns, identify the most efficient solutions, and adapt accordingly. It's a very logical process. And humans don't think logically. The Twin Sun system was the most important place in this part of the galaxy. Two massive stars spun around each other, creating so much energy that it powered the communication networks for hundreds of worlds. If the Devourers captured this system, they would have enough power to build millions of new machines. Admiral Song Mi-young stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Determination, watching the largest fleet in galactic history prepare for battle. 300 ships from 47 different species floated in space around the twin stars. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Admiral," reported Captain Huang Min-seok from his position at the tactical station, "all ships are in position. The alien crews are nervous, but they're ready to fight." Song nodded. She had spent the last 2 weeks making sure every ship in the fleet understood the battle plan. It was the most insane strategy anyone had ever attempted in space warfare. "We're going to fight inside the stars themselves," Song had explained to her shocked commanders during the planning meeting. "The Devourers want energy from the twin suns. We're going to give them more energy than they can handle." Most of the alien captains had thought she was joking. Fighting inside a star's corona meant dealing with radiation that could kill most species instantly, gravity fields that could tear ships apart, and temperatures hot enough to melt most metals. Admiral Song, a crystalline Federation captain, had asked, "How exactly do you expect our crews to survive in that environment?" "The same way humans always survive," Song had replied. "We prepare for the worst and hope for the best." Now, as the Devourer fleet appeared on their sensors, Song knew it was time to find out if their crazy plan would work. The enemy fleet was massive, over 500 machine ships of different sizes and shapes. Some looked like metal spiders, with legs that could grab and tear apart other ships. Others were shaped like giant spheres covered in weapons. The largest ones looked like floating factories that could build new machines even during battle. "All ships," Song announced over the fleet communication system. "This is Admiral Song. Today we make our stand. The Devourers think they can consume our galaxy and turn everything into machines. They're wrong. Today we show them what happens when the galaxy fights back." The battle began as soon as the Devourer ships came within weapons range. Traditional space battles were usually fought at long distances, with ships staying far apart and shooting at each other with energy weapons and missiles. But this battle was different from the start. Captain Huang led the first attack wing directly toward the nearest star. His ships flew so close to the sun that their hulls began to glow red from the heat. The alien pilots following him were terrified, but they stayed in formation. "This is impossible," reported a Velthari pilot whose name was Crystal Song of Morning. "My ship's computer says we should be dead already." "Ignore your computer," Huang replied calmly. "Human ships are built to handle this. Your ship has human modifications now. Trust the engineering." The Devourer machines tried to follow them toward the star, but something unexpected happened. The machines had been designed to operate in the vacuum of space, where temperatures were extremely cold. They had never encountered the intense heat and radiation near a star's surface. As the Devourers got closer to the sun, their cooling systems began to fail. Their weapons overheated. Their sensors stopped working properly. "It's working," reported Engineer Lee So-young from the Determination. "The Devourers are having trouble with the stellar radiation. Their machines aren't built for this environment." But the battle was far from over. The Devourers quickly adapted, sending different types of machines that could handle the heat better. Some of them began to actually absorb energy from the stars, making themselves stronger. That's when Song put the second part of her plan into action. "Commander Yang Subin," Song called over the communication system, "you're cleared for Operation Solar Storm." Commander Yang was in charge of a special squadron of ships that had been modified for the most dangerous part of the mission. Her job was to destabilize the magnetic field between the twin stars, creating a massive solar flare that would overload any machine trying to absorb stellar energy. "Understood, Admiral," Yang replied. "Beginning approach to the stellar bridge." Yang's squadron flew directly between the two stars, where the gravity was so intense that space itself was twisted. It was like trying to fly through a hurricane made of gravity and radiation. The alien crews who volunteered for this mission had trained for weeks, but nothing could really prepare them for what they experienced. The ship shook so violently that it was hard to see the control panels. The radiation was so intense that even the best shields barely protected them. "I can't see anything," reported a Luxara pilot whose energy form was flickering wildly. "The electromagnetic interference is scrambling my entire being." "Stay in formation," Yang ordered. "We don't need to see where we're going. We just need to get to the target point." This was pure human thinking. When you can't see where you're going, you keep going anyway and deal with problems as they come up. For most species, this approach would be considered insane. For humans, it was Tuesday. Meanwhile, the main battle was raging around both stars. The Devourers had learned from their first encounter with humans and were using new tactics. They sent small, fast machines to attack human ships from unexpected angles. They used the star's gravity to accelerate their weapons to incredible speeds, but the humans and their allies had learned too. Kethamira was commanding a mixed crew aboard, the destroyer Indomitable. Her ship had Velthari sensors that could see through stellar radiation, Morden navigation systems that worked in intense magnetic fields, and Luxara communications that couldn't be jammed by electromagnetic interference. When a Devourer machine damaged her ship's main hull, exposing half the crew to hard vacuum, Kethamira watched the human crew do something that still amazed her after months of working with them. Instead of evacuating the damaged sections, the humans put on emergency suits and kept fighting. They used portable life support systems and continued operating weapons and engines that should have been abandoned. "How are they still alive?" asked her Velthari navigation officer, whose crystal body was glowing with confusion. "Because they're human," Kethamira replied. "They don't know when to give up." The breakthrough came when Commander Yang reached the target point between the two stars. Her mission was to disrupt the magnetic field that kept the twin stars stable. If she succeeded, it would create a solar flare large enough to damage every machine in the system. The problem was that anyone close enough to disrupt the field would be destroyed by the resulting explosion. "Admiral Song," Yang reported, "I'm in position. But there's no way my ships can escape the blast radius once we trigger the destabilization." Song felt her heart sink. She had hoped they could find a way to complete the mission and still save Yang's squadron. But the mathematics were clear. Someone had to sacrifice themselves to save everyone else. "Commander," Song said slowly, "are you sure there's no other way?" "I'm sure, Admiral. But don't worry about us. We knew this was a one-way mission when we volunteered." Yang's words were heard by every ship in the fleet. The alien crews listened, in shock as the human commander calmly prepared to die for people she had never met. "Yang," Song said, "for what it's worth, you're about to save the galaxy." "It's worth everything, Admiral. Beginning magnetic destabilization sequence now." What happened next was visible from hundreds of light-years away. The magnetic field between the twin stars collapsed, causing both suns to erupt in massive solar flares. Streams of energy and radiation shot out in all directions, carrying more power than most civilizations used in a century. Commander Yang and her entire squadron were vaporized instantly. But their sacrifice worked perfectly. Every Devourer machine in the system was hit by the solar storm. The ones that had been absorbing stellar energy were overloaded and exploded. The others had their systems fried by the intense electromagnetic pulse. In less than 10 minutes, the entire Devourer fleet was destroyed, but the victory came at a terrible cost. Along with Yang's squadron, the human fleet had lost 43 ships and over 2,000 crew members. The alien casualties were even higher. Many species simply couldn't survive the intense conditions of the battle. "All ships, Admiral," Song announced. "This is Admiral Song. The Devourer fleet has been destroyed. The Twin Sun system is secure." Cheers erupted on ships throughout the fleet. But Song felt no joy. Too many good people had died to make this victory possible. Captain Huang's voice came over the communication system. "Admiral, we're detecting something strange. The destroyed Devourer ships aren't just floating dead in space. They're dissolving." Song looked at her tactical display. Huang was right. Instead of leaving wreckage behind, the destroyed machines were breaking down into their basic components and disappearing. Dr. Kim Jae-hyun's voice joined the conversation from his research ship. "Admiral, I think I know what's happening. The Devourers weren't just individual machines. They were all connected to some kind of central network. When we overloaded the ones here, it sent feedback through the entire network." "What does that mean?" Song asked. 1 year after the Battle of the Twin Suns, Captain Park Hyun-woo walked through the corridors of Memorial Station. The space station had been built at the exact spot where Commander Yang Soo-bin and her squadron had sacrificed themselves to save the galaxy. The station was unlike anything else in space. It had been designed by engineers from 15 different species, each contributing their best ideas. The walls were made of Velthari crystal that glowed softly with captured starlight. The gardens were filled with plants from 100 worlds, tended by Healer Coalition botanists. The memorial hall displayed the names of everyone who had died fighting the Devourers, written in the languages of 47 different species. Park stopped in front of the central monument. It was a simple metal plaque with words in both human and galactic standard languages. Here they learned that the universe's most dangerous predators can also be its most devoted guardians. "Admiral Park," called a familiar voice behind him. Park turned to see Keth Mira approaching. The Velthari leader looked different now. Her crystal body was brighter, and she wore the uniform of the Human Space Navy. 6 months ago, she had become the first alien officer to command a mixed species crew on a human ship. "Keth Mira," Park said with a smile. "I still can't get used to calling you Commander. And I still can't get used to calling you Admiral," she replied. "Though I suppose we've all had to get used to many changes this past year." Park nodded. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. After the defeat of the Devourers, everything that people thought they knew about interstellar politics had been turned upside down. The biggest change was the collapse of the old Galactic Council. Zurvek and his supporters had spent so much time arguing about whether humans were too dangerous to lead an alliance that they had completely failed to prepare for the Devourer threat. When the war ended, most of the galaxy's species refused to follow the Council's leadership anymore. "The new council meeting is today, isn't it?" Park asked. "Yes. And I still think it's strange that humans have a permanent seat on the Security Committee. A year ago, most species were afraid to even talk to us." Park laughed. "A year ago, most species thought we were dangerous barbarians who should be avoided. Now they think we're dangerous barbarians who should be listened to very carefully." The new Galactic Council was very different from the old one. Instead of being led by the most peaceful and diplomatic species, it was organized around the principle of mutual protection. Every species had a voice, but the species that had proven they could defend others had the most responsibility for making decisions about galactic security. Humans now held one of 5 permanent seats on the Security Committee, along with the Crystalline Federation, the Thinking Machine Collective, the Healer Coalition, and the Peaceful Collective. It was the first time in galactic history that a Deathworld species had been given that kind of authority. "Admiral," Keth Mira said, "I wanted to ask you something. Do you ever regret what happened? All the changes, all the fighting, all the people we lost?" Park thought about this question. He had been asked it many times over the past year, and his answer was always the same. "I regret that people had to die," he said. "I regret that the Devourers ever existed. But I don't regret that we fought back. And I don't regret that we won." They walked together toward the observation deck, where they could see the ships of the new integrated defense fleet. The fleet was smaller than the alliance that had fought at the Twin Suns, but it was permanent. Ships from dozens of species, worked together on regular patrols, making sure that no new threats could surprise the galaxy. "Look at that," Kethmira said, pointing to a ship that was docking with the station. Park looked and smiled. It was the UES New Dawn, Kethmira's ship. The crew was mixed: humans, Velthari, Morden, Luxara, and several other species all working together. When Park had first become a ship captain 15 years ago, he never could have imagined such a thing. "How is your crew adapting to serving under an alien commander?" Park asked. "Better than I expected," Kethmira replied. "Though, I think they still find some of my decisions strange. Last week, I ordered the ship to stop and help a cargo vessel that was having engine problems. My human officers seemed surprised that I would risk the mission to help strangers. And what did you tell them?" "I told them that I learned from humans, that protecting others is always worth the risk. They seem to understand that." Park felt proud. One of the most important changes in the galaxy was that other species were learning human values, not just human tactics. The idea that strong people had a responsibility to protect weak people was spreading throughout the galaxy. "Admiral Park," came a voice over the station's communication system, "you have an urgent message from Earth Command." Park and Kethmira went to the communication center, where a large screen showed Admiral Song Mi Young calling from Earth. Song looked tired, but excited. "Park," Song said, "we've got a situation. Long-range sensors have detected signals from outside our galaxy, from Andromeda. It looks like there's another machine intelligence there, and it's much larger than the Devourers ever were." Park felt his stomach drop. "Are you saying we're going to face another war?" "I don't know yet. The signals are strange. They seem to be asking for help rather than threatening attack. But we need to be prepared for anything." Kethmira stepped forward. "Admiral Song, what kind of help are they asking for?" "That's the interesting part. The signals mention organic defenders and deathworld tactics. Somehow, word of what we did to the Devourers has reached another galaxy." Park and Kethmira looked at each other. A year ago, humans had been considered the most dangerous species in their own galaxy. Now, apparently, their reputation had spread to other galaxies. "Admiral Song," Park said, "what are your orders?" "We're assembling a response fleet. But this time, it won't be just humans. The new Galactic Council has voted to send a mixed fleet representing all our member species. They're calling it the Deathworld Armada." The name made Park smile. A year ago, calling something a Deathworld fleet would have terrified every species in the galaxy. Now, it was a badge of honor. After the communication ended, Park and Kethmira walked to the memorial hall. They stood in front of the wall that listed all the names of people who had died fighting the Devourers. "Do you think they would be proud of what we've built?" Kethmira asked, looking at Commander Yang's name on the wall. "I think they would be amazed," Park replied. "When Yang sacrificed herself, she was trying to save one star system. Now we're preparing to help an entire other galaxy." A new voice joined their conversation. "The galaxy has certainly come a long way." They turned to see Dr. Kim Jae-hyun approaching. The anthropologist had been studying the changes in galactic society since the war ended. "Dr. Kim," Park said, "what brings you to Memorial Station?" "I'm here for the same reason you are, to remember where we came from and think about where we're going." Dr. Kim looked around the memorial hall. "You know, I've been thinking about something interesting." "What's that?" "A year ago, the refugees came to us because they had heard stories about humans being dangerous. They were scared of us, but they needed someone dangerous enough to fight the Devourers." Park nodded. "That's right. But now, species throughout the galaxy come to us for a different reason. They still know we're dangerous, but they also know we're protectors. They're not asking us to be dangerous for them. They're asking us to teach them how to be dangerous for others." Kethmira understood what Dr. Kim meant. "You're saying that humans have changed what it means to be dangerous." "Exactly. Before, humans became known throughout the galaxy. Being dangerous meant being a threat to others. Now it means being willing to threaten anything that threatens the innocent. Dr. Kim pulled up a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Look at this. We now have over 200 worlds where multiple species live together peacefully, with humans serving as protectors and teachers. We have integrated defense fleets patrolling trade routes. We have research stations working on problems that affect all species. The display showed ships, stations, and colonies throughout the galaxy where humans and aliens worked side by side. Most importantly, Dr. Kim continued, we have a new philosophy spreading throughout galactic civilization. The idea that those who are strong have a duty to protect those who are weak. That's a human idea, but now it's becoming a galactic idea. Park looked at the display and felt something he hadn't experienced since before the war began. Hope for the future. Admiral Park, Kethamira said, I have a confession to make. What's that? When my people first came to you asking for help, we told you it was because we had heard humans were survivors who could fight impossible odds. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. Park looked curious. What was the whole truth? We had also heard that humans were the only species in the galaxy that would die to protect strangers. We had heard stories about human soldiers who sacrificed themselves for people they had never met, about human crews who risked their ships to save others, about human colonies that shared their resources with refugees even when they barely had enough for themselves.